Tonight we reviewed a talk of the Lubavitcher Rebbe from 1982, Shalom HaGalil, the war in Lebanon. And when you look at those words, they could have been said this morning. In Gaza, now the soldiers had taken over some area of Gaza and they were exhausted as they go sometimes for so many hours, like in their boots, no breaks, nothing. Just keep moving. So they were completely exhausted. So they actually had a little time to sleep. And they came to a building in the area they took over that was still intact enough. They found 9 beds, like in a big area in the open room. And they were like, okay, so that means 9 of us can sleep on a bed. And the rest will go upstairs on the roof. And there was some sort of makeshift accommodation for those guys. And then at a certain point, during the break, we'll switch. And then 9 more guys will go down. And okay, fine. So the 9 lucky soldiers are about to collapse. And then they're like, whoa, we'd like to daven. We'd like to pray, the evening prayer, the Ma'ariv prayer. And we could actually pray with a quorum because there's 9 of us. But of course, you need 10 for a quorum. There's a lot of soldiers on the rooftop. Let's just go up. And we'll get 1 more soldier, then we'll be 10, and we'll pray with a quorum, daven with a minyan, and then we'll collapse for however many minutes we get till someone else gets these beds, and we go on the rooftop until whatever, we eventually keep marching again. That's what they did. Then they were starting to go up the stairs to see who could they find that would join their quorum, their minyan, and at that moment, a soldier was coming down. He's perfect. Can you join our quorum? Can you join our minyan? And he's like, no way. I don't do that. They're like, oh, come on. We're so tired. We just want to go to sleep. We could go on the rooftop. There's plenty of soldiers. You'll find someone else. He's like, we know we could find someone else, but listen, you came down and we're so tired. We just want to pray and sleep for however many minutes we can until we're going to get woken up and someone else can get the beds and then we're going to all have to march anyway. And we're so exhausted. So he's like, okay, fine. All right. I'll join your quorum. I'll join your prayer session, but I just have to use the bathroom first. Okay, fine. Yeah, they found a bathroom in the building. And all right. So he goes to the bathroom and they're waiting. Now he's there quite a while and they're like, this doesn't make sense. Obviously, everybody's antennas on very high gear in Gaza. This doesn't make sense. Why is he there so long? And as they come to the bathroom, they hear, they didn't want to just interrupt him, but they hear it sounded like he was struggling. And they break open the door and they see that in the bathroom, there was a tunnel from the bathroom. And terrorists had come out of the tunnel and were trying to pull him down, and they had their hands on his mouth so he couldn't scream. And he was like holding on to some, I don't know, it was craziness. Somehow they saved him. They threw a grenade down the tunnel. They killed the terrorists. He came out of the bathroom alive. And they weren't attacked by the terrorists that were in the tunnel that could have attacked all of them as they were sleeping. And he was so shaken. He was like, wow, this prayer really saved me. I mean, I was going down the steps to go to the bathroom. You asked me to join your prayer, and that's why you realized that it didn't make sense how long I was in that bathroom, and that's what saved me. This prayer really saved me. One story of many that come out literally every single day. I hear many every single day. But just again, I thought so powerful, this point of who's doing a favor for whom? As we are all right, we're going to be good. We're going to be good for God. We're going to be good to help someone else. And no, always, sometimes as obviously as this, and often not as obviously as this. But when we're being so good and doing for everyone else or doing for God, we're really, really, really always, every single time, doing for ourselves. This story of Gaza, of Hamas, is not new. This story of God's unbelievable protection is not new either. Every day I pray and I give charity when it's not the Shabbos, but every day I pray and ask God to protect the Israeli government, that they should have the wisdom to do the right thing and the courage, the strength, the stamina to do the right thing. The right thing means that which is going to save Jewish lives. I pray every day that the army be the tool through which God will do supernatural wonders. The army is an army of humans. It's nothing different than any other army. But God should use this army as his vehicle to do supernatural. And unfortunately, we've seen in the past that God does this. God works through the army, supernatural things happen, but then the government falls into political calculations, and all the supernatural victories of the army don't really help. So I pray every single day that the government have the wisdom to know what's the right thing and have the courage, the moral fiber, the stamina, the fortitude to stand up to all the pressures they're on every single day from within and from without, and do the right thing. The right thing means that which protects and saves Jewish lives. I'm sharing that obviously anyone that would like to piggyback on my ideas, and also pray every day for the government and give charity for the government is welcome to do so. I think it's a very, very, very significant prayer now. The Lubavitcher Rebbe spoke in July of 1982. This was during the middle of the war that was called, some people call it the First Lebanon War. They called it Shalom HaGalil. Shalom HaGalil means peace in Galil. Galil is the region along the Israeli-Lebanese border. And there was not peace in the Galil. Really, the truth is, Israel had what we call relative peace with Lebanon until about 1968. In 1968 is when the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, took root in southern Lebanon to attack Israel. And from 1968, they just got worse and worse and worse. In 76, Israel entered Lebanon to try to make a buffer zone. The buffer zone was by basically trying to have Christian Lebanese. There were now. There really aren't, but there were at that time quite a number of Christians in the Lebanese population. To have Christian Lebanese be between, so to speak, the Israelis and the PLO-led Arab Lebanese. That was in 76. In 78, the UN said, no, Israel has to leave. Israel is the aggressor, of course. We're going to take over. We're going to have a UN peacekeeping force. That means nothing in this area. And as soon as Israel left and the UN took over in 1978, all the PLO terrorist attacks began again. Many, many skirmishes, attacks, reprisals. It went on until June of 82. So it was about 4 years that the UN is officially doing nothing there. And the PLO are attacking and taking hostage and doing all the same things that we see now. And in June of 82, like the final straw was when the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdoms was shot and very seriously wounded in London by terrorists. And they're like, okay, this is it. You have a worldwide terror against Israel and against Jews, and we have to stop you. We have to crush you. And everyone in Israel agreed to this, and it was June 6, 1982. And Israel launched an attack on Lebanon for the purpose of destroying the PLO and getting the Syrians out. Because, of course, the Syrians were in Lebanon promoting the PLO and supporting them and sort of upholding that terror government, if you will. And the Israelis had hoped to install, there was a Christian party government, the Christian Lebanese, as the government. It was so similar to today, meaning everything that we see in 1982 and everything the Rebbe is going to address about 1982 is just completely what's going on now. The terrorists were within civilian population. The terrorists were using the civilians as human shields. No, that's not an innovation of Hamas. That's what terrorists do. Every refugee camp they came to try to extricate the PLO from the camp, there were bunkers, there were trenches, there were firing positions. They were in tunnels. Hamas, has an edge there on everyone with their tunnels, but it was still very, very, very difficult. But still, they attacked on June 6th, and by June 14th, that's a week later, basically, they got to the outskirts of Beirut, the capital. And then, this is, of course, their fatal mistake, as the Rebbe discusses, the government made a political decision, not a military decision, though they tried to pretend it was a military decision, but it wasn't a military decision. They made a political decision not to capture Beirut. They said it would be too difficult and there'd be too great a loss of life. We have 30,000 Syrian soldiers. We have the PLO. So we're just going to besiege the city. We're laying siege on the city and we're going to bomb it. They were trying to bomb the PLO targets and siege the city. They're trying to assassinate the leaders, as of course is exactly the same strategy the Israeli government is using today. And this went on from June 14th until sometime in August. And in August, they agreed that 14,000 PLO and 6,500 Fatah, another terrorist organization, can leave Lebanon. You're talking about over 20,000 terrorists. They gave permission and they called it a victory. The Israeli government said this was a tremendous victory, that they allowed 20,500 terrorists to leave Lebanon. Basically, they all went to Tunisia. And guess what? Israel claims they have a victory, and the PLO have a new headquarters in Tunisia. And the IDF stayed in Lebanon for a while, and then as they left, these small radical Islamic organizations sprung up, and they consolidated, of course, in today what we call Hezbollah. Hezbollah is much larger than the PLO. Hezbollah now has, they claim, at least 30,000 full-time terrorists. What does that mean to be a full-time terrorist is an interesting question. Full-time fighters, and another between 100 and 120,000 volunteers. Maybe they're not on Hezbollah's pay books. Maybe they're not getting paid on the books of Hezbollah, but they're volunteer terrorists. That's the history. And I wanted to go into this idea and the Lubavitcher Rebbe's perspective on this because, again, it just is so clearly echoing, creating, delineating what is happening now and what we have to pray for, what we have to make sure does not happen now as happened then. You say, well, what can I do about it? We can know what to pray for. We can know where to put our spiritual energy. So that was the history, the Rebbe's perspective. The Rebbe speaks here. This is a talk from July of 1982. So again, in July of 1982, as you now know the history, is when the Israeli government could have captured Beirut, but chose not to. And they were still besieging it, staying outside on the outskirts of Beirut while they were demanding for the PLO to leave. And that went on for the entire July and into August. So the Rebbe speaking, this is 3 separate occasions where the Rebbe spoke about this in July of 82. And the Rebbe started, as we mentioned before, as the Rebbe always will go in these situations, to the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch. Every time to the same section, Shulchan Aruch, Code of Jewish Law, the Laws of Shabbos, section 329, Siman, specifically, the specific subsection 6, every single time. This was always the Rebbe's go-to. And the law there states, as we've learned before, but it's definitely worth saying again, the law states, if you have the non-Jews are coming, the Gentiles are coming and besieging the Jewish cities, and they're coming on Shabbos, and they're demanding money, and it's Shabbos, you are not allowed to desecrate the Shabbos. You can't desecrate the Sabbath. For money, give them the money, let them take the money, don't desecrate the Sabbath. But if they are coming to kill, Gentiles are coming to kill on Sabbath, then of course we desecrate the Sabbath and we go out and we fight them. What if they're coming, as we say, stam? We don't know. We don't know why they're coming. Maybe it's just for money. Maybe it's to kill. We don't take a chance. And we desecrate the Sabbath and we go out and fight them. Let's take it a step further. Let's say it's the Sabbath and they didn't arrive yet, but we know they're coming. Well, if we wait, maybe by the time they come, the Sabbath will be over. No, we don't do that. Desecrate the Sabbath, we pick up our arms, and we go and we fight on the Sabbath, even if we don't know if they're coming to kill us. But if there's the chance, go out, preemptive strike on the Sabbath to kill them first to save Jewish lives. And then the Code of Jewish Law goes on and says, if though it's a border city and the Gentiles are coming and they're not coming for souls, they're not coming to kill you, they're only coming for money. Not only that, they're coming for what we would call small change. They're coming for straw, meaning the most cheap commodity. These crazy Gentiles are coming with their arms just to get all of our straw. Desecrate the Sabbath to kill them. Why? We just said. If they're coming for money, don't desecrate the Sabbath. If they're coming to kill you, desecrate the Sabbath. If we don't know why they're coming, desecrate the Sabbath. Here, we know why they're coming, and we know they're not coming to kill. They are literally only coming for money and for small money, for straw. No, desecrate the Sabbath. Because if it's a border city, once they conquer that city, it's very easy to conquer the land. This law is not because of the holiness of Israel. The source of this law, everything in the Code of Jewish Law, ultimately goes back to the Talmud. In the Talmud, in the discussion in the Talmud, which is the source of this law, the Talmud is discussing a city in Babylonia, Naharda. In Babylonia, nothing to do with the holiness of Israel, but a Jewish settlement in Babylonia that was on the border. And if we allow them to come, we give them entry, we give them ability to come in because it's Sabbath, we don't want to desecrate the Sabbath and they only want straw anyway. No. Once they have a foothold in a border city, they could conquer the whole country. So even though they're just coming for money, not for souls, on the Sabbath, go out and fight them if it's a border city. And that is always Lubavitcher Rebbe's point. Rebbe says the whole Israel is so tiny. It's so narrow. Once they're getting a foothold, we gifted them with the whole country. We have to destroy the enemy. And of course, this is exactly what happened. You don't have to be a believer You don't have to be a believer in Torah, you don't have to be a believer in the Rebbe. We just look historically. That's exactly what happened. We gifted them with a land. The land is what we call Gaza. Gaza was our land. It's Jewish land, all the way back. Biblical land. And we gave it to them. We kicked out the Jews. There were some 10,000 Jews in Gaza. They were kicked out. It was horrific. If you would see the videos of how the Jews were literally torn from their settlements that they built with their own hands to gift the Arabs with this land. And what happened? Exactly what it says in the Talmud, exactly what it says in the Code of Jewish Law, exactly what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says. They weren't satisfied with getting Gaza. They weren't satisfied with getting that border city, that border land. It wasn't just a city, it was a whole piece of land. No. Now, you have a foothold in the border city, you could conquer the whole country. And that's exactly what they've been trying to do ever since. And they're shooting rockets and trying to destroy and conquer the entire Israel. What's their slogan? From the river to the sea. We want to take 10 million people and drive them into the sea because we want this land. We want the entire land. It's not enough that we got a land and we could build it up and make a beautiful settlement. We don't want that. We want to destroy Israel. We got the border city, and from here we're going to get the whole country. The Rebbe said about the Lebanese war, we need to complete the goal of the war. The goal of the war was to remove the danger to Jewish security. Not just the security in the north. People are saying, why is the Rebbe emphasizing this point? And I think it's very relevant today. The same way people could think, okay, Gaza is in the south. Until what happened on October 7th, that is what the Jews in Tel Aviv were saying. Okay, so Sderot, these cities, we don't care very much about them. Okay, in the settlements, well, these crazy, fanatical, religious settlers, we don't care about them. I mean, as long, in Tel Aviv, we're fine. And then October 7th changed that because they realized it's not just this person or just this person or that type that's not my type or that type that's not my type. It's all of us. It's all of us. And that's the point the Rebbe is making here in his talk in 1982 about this war in Lebanon. Don't think, okay, it's just the Jews living in the north. I mean, we live comfortably in Tel Aviv. We're so far from the Galil. It's not our problem. So, okay. The Rebbe says, no, that's not how these things work. It's not just to create security for the Jews in the north. It's to create security for the Jews in the north and the Jews in the south and the Jews in the east and the Jews in the west. Once you're attacking Israel, it's not that far from one part of the country to the other. How many hours is it to drive from the southern tip to the northern tip of the entire Israel? The Rebbe said, every Jew deserves to live without fear. And the only way a Jew could live in Israel without fear is if the army completes the job that they started. They can't leave in the middle without finishing the job. Meaning, right now, you're just having the army sit at the outskirts of Beirut and do nothing and, shoot some bombs at various PLO targets. And ultimately, your goal, your desire is to have the PLO leave and go somewhere else and continue terrorizing us from somewhere else. That's not called finishing the job. Finishing the job is destroying the PLO. The verse says clearly that if you allow the enemy to continue to exist, they will be thorns in your eyes. They will be thorns in your sides. There's no such thing as what Israel did in its previous two. They use the word excursion, which is really weird, barbaric word for such a concept. But the previous two times they fought with Hamas, they called it like trimming the land, mowing the land, or just like trimming them down so they don't have too much power. You trim the grass, it just grows back stronger. So when they said in Lebanon in 1982, yeah, we're getting rid of the problem. We're going to kick the PLO out of Lebanon and we're going to get rid of the problem. The Rebbe saying, you're not getting rid of the problem if you kick the PLO out of Lebanon. You want to get rid of the problem, you have to destroy the PLO. And the Rebbe said, it's so eerie because I'm saying literally everything the Rebbe said in 1982, I could give you the entire talk and pretend the Rebbe said it this way, and it would basically completely match, almost. This is what the army is saying. The army are the experts in security. When you're just thinking security, you're not thinking politics. You know that if you went in and fought, you need to finish the job, and finishing the job means to completely destroy the PLO, completely take over Lebanon, and that's how you maintain security for every Jew in Israel. The Torah says that for security, you follow the experts. Like with medicine, we listen to experts, listen to the doctors. So they're experts insecurity, and that's the army. And this is a very critical message for now. Yes, the Rebbe said this in 1982. Maybe the Rebbe said it for 2023, 2000, almost 24. People can't get tired of the war. They can't just say, we want it to end, let it be over. We're never going to finish this anyway. There's no way we're going to completely destroy Hamas entirely. We can pretend we destroyed them enough. There's no such thing as destroying them enough. It wasn't enough. That literally, they got every single member of the PLO out of Lebanon. That wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough. How much we destroyed of Hamas. We so much destroyed their infrastructure and the tunnels that they've spent millions of dollars on. Now we're finding receipts for millions of dollars they spent on building those tunnels. It'll take 5 years for them to rebuild themselves. That's not long enough. That's not good enough. No matter how long it takes, no matter how much the world screams, we have to know, and we have to pray, and we have to spiritually insist. Again, I don't think anyone here is a member of the Israeli war cabinet, but we have a spiritual power. Just like I said yesterday, with these Noahide women, we discussed each one's finding the falseness of Christianity, which I felt was such a spiritually significant thing to do on the eve of December 25th. So when we, as Jewish women, turn to God with this strength, with this conviction that the war has to be fought until we completely finish the job, until there's no more Hamas, there's no more tunnels, and we stay there to make sure that nothing gets built up again. Like the PLO left Lebanon, and of course the PLO continued in Tunisia, and we have Hezbollah, which has many more members than the PLO ever had. But also said, it's a very strong point for us to remember, only when you finish the job does it validate all the Jewish lives that were lost in the war. Every Jew in the entire world. The only justification for a soldier's life to be lost is to secure the safety of the Jews in Israel. That justifies the lives lost, preventing the greater future loss of Jewish lives. That's the only justification. But if you don't finish the job, you didn't do anything meaningful enough to protect Jewish lives. So we have the tragedy of all the soldiers that are killed for nothing. If now, through their sacrifice, we created real protection, real safety for the Jews of Israel, that's a justification. It doesn't take away the tragedy, but it's a justification. But if we don't, there is no justification. The Rebbe said this in 1982. It was true in 1982. And it's very, very, very true now as well. The only justification for all the lives that have been lost is to guarantee that no more Jewish lives will be lost to Hamas or to any other terrorists in the area. Of course, we know, just like PLO left, and then we have Hezbollah. We destroyed Hamas, but we have the Islamic Jihad. No, we're not playing games. We have to destroy all possible threats for the Jewish people, and that's the only justification for every life that got lost. And especially, the Rebbe says, because God has shown so many miracles. Talking about in the Shalom HaGalil, in the war in Lebanon in 82, what the army calculated they needed 2 days to accomplish took less than one. The army, we're not talking about religious Jews here, we're talking about the army. The army declared, this is the hand of God. There's no way this is natural. And that's very similar to now. It sounds horrific, but when the army was calculating, if you remember, of course, it was a few weeks before the army went in, and they were sent a lot of bombers, a lot of planes to bomb and bomb and bomb to try to make it more possible. The army's calculation was every day from when we start sending in the soldiers, 12 are going to die. 12 soldiers will die every single day. Now, it's been about 70 days. And tragically, we have lost, of course, 152 soldiers, which is tragic. That's 152 fathers, 152 husbands, 152 sons, 152 brothers. It's so, so tragic, but it's very miraculous considering their original estimations. Considering the so difficult terrain the army is fighting. The terrain of the Lebanese war, the terrain of the Gaza war, it's the hardest terrain. Crowded areas, full of pseudo-civilians, terrorists that become civilians, and civilians that become terrorists. So the victories in the Lebanese war were miraculous, and the army knew they were miraculous. And the victories in Gaza are miraculous. And so many of the stories that I hear and I'm not sharing are coming from soldiers, are coming from commanders, are coming from people in the army that are seeing every single day God's hand. So here we have God showering his miracles. And then what happens? The Rebbe continued in Lebanon several times. The army reported that when the people, the terrorists, saw the soldiers coming, they fled from them in all directions, just like it says in the Torah that they'll flee from you in all directions. The army didn't even need to use their weapons sometimes. The people just fled. Of course, we saw that very strongly in the 6-Day War. Many times in the 6-Day War, how in the world did Israel win to the armies of, I believe, 5 nations? They fled from us. They saw us and they fled. That is God showing such miracles, such divine kindness, such compassion. So if God's doing all that, obviously, God wants us to finish this completely. And again, as the Torah says, you follow the experts in security, and that's the army. And the experts would all say that the best way to guarantee safety is to destroy the enemy. And that's not, unfortunately, what Israel did in 1982. They let them leave, they let them regroup, they let them continue to terrorize. Unfortunately, that's what happened then. And that is, of course, what we do not want to happen here. We don't want to give any safe passage to Hamas that are going to agree to go to Tunis or Iran. We don't want them to stop in the middle, even though, of course, every day of the war is so hard on so many levels. We want it to be finished. And especially, of course, because Hamas publicly stated, I'm sure you've all seen the videos, that they view October 7th as the greatest success ever, and they plan on doing it again and again and again, as many times as it takes. As many times as it takes until what? Well, until they get the entire Israel, of course. So we can't let them exist to have that opportunity. And it's just so powerful when I look at these words of the Rebbe, because again, these words were not said in October of 2023. Words were said in July of 1982. It's almost like were the words for then or were the words for now? I wonder that, because then they didn't listen. But if the Rebbe is saying the words were meant to be listened to. So maybe the words are for now. Maybe now is when these words really can have their full expression with all of our spiritual power, because we are spiritually empowering with all of our power. We can give the government that strength. As I said, I daven for the government every day. I give charity for the government every day besides Shabbos, to have the wisdom to know what to do, because I don't think that's simple. I definitely wouldn't claim to know what to do, but to have the wisdom to know what to do, and the strength and the courage and the conviction to do it. Any thoughts on any of this before I continue? Any of your thoughts on how you're processing this?
Question. I don't know if Rebbe said anything at that time, like he said to take Beirut. And with, so if they took Beirut, they have those, I don't remember the number, you said 10,000 or 30,000 terrorists were there at the time. So they would be like prisoners of war, and there are other people in Lebanon. So what would be after that? Let's say that they captured Beirut and the whole Lebanon. Then what? It would be just Lebanon that would be military governed by Israeli army?
That's an interesting question. And you could really contrast the Rebbe's perspective in the Lebanon War, conquering Beirut, to in the Yom Kippur War, where very similarly, not exactly the same. Obviously, a lot of people are probably discussing the Yom Kippur War this year. It's the number of years and the timing was very, very similar. And very quickly, by the miracle of God, the Jews were able to rout the armies, and the Rebbe pushed then for them to capture Damascus, the capital of Syria. The Jews then, they had Egypt from the south, and they had Syria from the north. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe looked at things very militarily. And the Rebbe said, you're not gaining anything like pushing back Egypt. Like, you're not going to be able to conquer Egypt. Like, you're not. You're not going to change the borders. But if you go to Syria, you could change the borders. Capture Damascus. The Rebbe said Damascus is a symbol. It's a symbol of Arab strength. And if you capture Damascus, even if you're going to have to give it back, it's going to make an impact on the Arabs. And you will change the borders, which seemingly means, the Rebbe was saying, that if you will take some of Syrian land, and as you're saying, I don't know if you call it Israel or call it a military zone, like similar to whatever the West Bank or Gaza now. But yeah, but with Lebanon, it seems from how the Rebbe discussed it, not only in this talk that I'm quoting, but in other places, that the Rebbe's vision was for them to take the whole Lebanon, just to conquer it. Conquer it and rule it. Lebanon's a weak country, conquer it and rule it. That's why, with all the attacks from Hezbollah, military strategists can, speculate from here to there, and who knows the truth. But it seems, again, who knows the truth, that Hamas thought that as they're attacking from the south, Hezbollah was going to attack from the north. Hezbollah is much, much larger than Hamas. Much larger. Many more fighters. As I said, they have officially 30 plus another 100 to 120,000. There's about 150,000. I think Hamas has 20,000. Used to have 20,000. Hopefully now has much less. Seems like we've already killed like 20,000 of them. So I don't know what they have now. But Hezbollah is much, much larger. But Hezbollah didn't attack. I mean, of course, they're, little things. But they didn't really go out with 30,000 terrorist soldiers and start conquering the north. And the speculation is because, obviously, we would say hand of God, but also because Lebanon really suffered, really got very, very broken in the war going back to 1982. And they don't have the strength for it. They know, even if they officially have 150,000, but they know they'll get smashed to pieces by the Israelis, and they know they can't afford it. So it does seem, again, long-winded answer to Chava's good question, it does seem that from the Rebbe's perspective, he wanted them to conquer Lebanon and to keep Lebanon. That's what I'm saying is the difference. Because when he was talking about conquering Damascus, the Rebbe said, you're going to have to give it back, but there's a point in conquering it. And it will change the boundaries, change the borders. The Rebbe said by the Yom Kippur War, there's no point in fighting a war and maintaining the same boundaries as before the war. What do we care? We need a few more inches of their land? No, as the Rebbe looks at it, which is, again, just very cold military logic, the more land you have that you're controlling, the more security you have. Because if you would, again, just envision this, if you're controlling Lebanon, then that whole movement that Iran, the whole Iran proxies of Hezbollah in Lebanon wouldn't be there. And then the whole north would be safe. Right now, if they would fire a missile on Tzfas from Lebanon, you have seconds to get to a safe room because they're so close geographically from southern Lebanon and Tzfas. When they fire a missile from Gaza to Sderot, you have at least a whole minute or two. They fire a missile from Lebanon to Tzfas, you have seconds. And nobody in Tzfas has safe rooms anyway. So yes, the Rebbe definitely, his vision was exactly as you're saying, conquer the whole Lebanon, make it completely safe, completely terrorist-free, and maintain it as a military zone. We don't have to settle it with Jews. We just want to maintain it, that it's going to be safe and we're not going to have the danger to the Jewish people in Israel. And the Rebbe again emphasized it's a danger to the whole Israel. It is a very important point that I'm saying, I think with October 7th, took away the cloudiness in the minds of many, many, many Israelis, that whenever it was always, okay, so yeah, you've got people in Sderot, who cares? Okay, you've got, those ultra-Orthodox settlers in the West Bank, they shouldn't be there anyway, who cares? It's nothing to do with us. And then October 7th showed them it does have to do with you. It has a lot to do with you. And that's why the whole country united to fight before the war. And this might have been also something Hamas was banking on. It's hard to know. There's different speculations. But some people said that because there were a number of Jews before October 7th that said, if there's a call up for war, if there's a draft, we're not coming. We don't, whatever their disagreements with the government, with this, with that, I'm not going to go into all the details. He said, we're not coming. We're not coming. We're not going to be part of your, and there were many people specifically in the Air Force, so we're not coming. And that, again, might have been a factor. Some people think it was a factor. Who knows? But that's not what happened. Every single person came, and this person that was very influential, what we probably call social media person, that was so loudly saying he would never come for a draft under this government. he came. They all came because they understood with October 7th, it's not that group that we don't care about, that group that we don't care about, that group that we don't care about. It's all of us. We're all in this together. It's against every single one of us. And that awareness is what's giving the Israeli government now the strength to ignore all the pressure they're currently under and keep fighting. And I think, again, my point in learning this, which of course we're not done, is to create that spiritual energy, that our group creates a spiritual energy because we're very powerful, every single one of us. And our spiritual energy definitely changes worlds. To create the spiritual energy that they have to keep fighting. They have to destroy Hamas. There's no such thing as half a victory or 3/4 of a victory, 80% of a victory. As the Rebbe was saying, you need 100% victory or it wasn't really a victory. Any other thoughts, any other questions on this? So the Rebbe goes on to say, just have a few minutes left. I'm not going to finish this now, but the Rebbe goes on to say that this is specifically in 1982, we saw so many opportunities God made to be able to say we didn't really know what was going on and conquer Beirut, destroy it, take over Lebanon. Very interesting things the Rebbe points out happened then. Weird things. Obviously, the world is a bit of a different place today, but still, even then, the President of America went on a 10-day vacation. Like as if, so to speak, for 10 days, guys, do what you want. I'm out of commission. I don't think he was out of commission then, even though he didn't have a cell phone in his pocket, but I'm sure he still knew what was going on, but he could pretend. Also, the Prime Minister of Israel came to America then. Again, he wasn't out of commission either, but he could also pretend. So the President of America could pretend he didn't know what was going on. He was on vacation. The Prime Minister of Israel could pretend I didn't know what my army was doing. I was in America. There was even someone new in the War Department who could say, I didn't know the protocol. So I didn't know I had the power to stop them. I didn't know I was supposed to stop them. I'm new. I didn't know the ropes. So the Rebbe said, why did God do this? Why did God have the President of America go on vacation in the middle of this war and have the Prime Minister of Israel go to America in the middle of this war and have them make a change to the head of the War Department in the middle of this war? It was all done so the army could conquer and everyone could pretend their hands are clean. We didn't know what was going on, but they still didn't do it. And again, it's very interesting because how does this parallel now? I guess we'll see. But I think the point is we're also going to see these messages of God setting the scene that don't be so scared of all the shadows. Whatever stupid political excuses you need to make that no one's going to believe anyway, you can make them too. God's going to take care of that as well. You just need to do what you have to do. And it's so sad. Just the more you know Israeli history, modern Israeli history, the more you know what I'm referring to. It's so sad when politics comes before Jewish lives. So tragic. You can't think of a greater tragedy than such a tragedy. And that, the Rebbe is saying, is what we have to avoid. We can't put politics in front of Jewish lives. We have to literally just think of what is a way to preserve Jewish lives, and that's what we have to do, and nothing else really matters. Nothing else really makes a difference. We just have to preserve Jewish lives. Saying how God does his wonders, like lays it all out for us, and we could just be like, oh yeah, that would have been convenient, but whatever, we went a different route. God can't be wasting his energies. And the Rebbe can't be wasting his words. Which is why when I look at these words that were not fulfilled in 1982, because the Rebbe was very clearly telling them what to do and they did not listen. Just like in the Yom Kippur War, where the Rebbe told them clearly, conquer Damascus. They did not listen. So were the words of the Rebbe in the Yom Kippur War and were the words of the Rebbe in Shalom HaGalil in 1982 all to empower what's going to happen now? I don't know. But I'm wondering if those words then are really also, or maybe even stronger than that, primarily words for now.